Back in March, when national lockdown was enforced, many of us found it easy to imagine a time when all of this would be over. A single, obvious moment when life resumed to normal, when friends and families welcomed us into their homes, and we all talked about how hard it had been, and how happy we were that the virus was behind us. Certainly, most of the people in my office thought working from home was only going to last a few days. Such wishful thinking was even prescribed to us. Boris Johnson declared that if we all did what we were told, we could turn the tide on the virus within 12 weeks. Even during the midst of the lockdown, when restrictions were starting to be lifted, the promise of some normality were given to some weird traffic light cone system based on a newly created R rate. Much of the media encouraged this feeling as well, when the promise of a vaccine by September was floated about. As these hopeless timelines collapse, and now as restrictions on our social lives retighten, the endpoint we're all craving for is becoming harder and harder to imagine. Johnson's assurances that it could be over by Christmas back in July feel laughable. There's been a real mix of communication coming from the government, scientists, politicians, the media, but they all now essentially agree on one thing, that coronavirus and some version of it is here to stay. This dawning awareness is likely to make a second wave and another lockdown even more psychologically challenging than the first. For many, it was only the belief that we were working towards a clear endpoint that made the extreme measures to combat the virus palatable. Even then, reported cases of depression among UK adults doubled. The second time will be no easier for having been through it. We may see a light at the end of the tunnel, but a train is certainly on its way. So with that in mind, how do we summon the strength and energy to endure another wave and lockdown? There was certainly a time when I felt completely exhausted as a result of the constant news surrounding the pandemic. It made me switch off and form a twisted sense of resilience. I even suggested that during a trip away to Barcelona with some close friends, when travel corridors were opened in July, that we banned a conversation about coronavirus. This wasn't because I didn't care about the pandemic, nor that I was ignorant about the situation. It was just exhausting having so much weight on your shoulders all the time, 24/7, and this was my form of escape. I didn't fully realise the extent of the problem it had caused on my mental health before going out there. I had an inability to relax, to unwind, to get away from it all, even just for a few seconds, and felt as isolated in my head as at home, waiting for some wishful timeline of when it will all be over. When this second wave does go ahead, I only fear that we've grown so numb from the first wave that it will only further widen our anxiety and helplessness of the situation. I can't say this will be any easier this time around, but it's important that we find strength through our friends and family and start treating this virus as part of our life. We cannot hope for endpoints, for vaccines, that restrictions will change. We just need to accept this is part of life now, regardless of the prescribed wishful thinking. And as sad as that is, it's much better than being in a constant state of the unknown. Our desire to put the pandemic behind us makes sense, but the virus, masks, social distancing rules, hand sanitizers, quarantines, lockdowns aren't going anywhere anytime soon.